They say winter in Vermont is beautiful, especially if you're visiting. But when you live there, when it's the place you're forced to return to, dragging a suitcase and a daughter you'd give your life for, it's not snowy postcards and sleigh bells. It's silence, cold, and ghosts you never finished burying. I hadn't stepped foot on the Whitmore estate in over 4 years, not since Thomas died. My husband, their golden son, and the only reason I was ever tolerated inside that house in the first place. He was the buffer between me and them. Without him, I was just a stain on their silk. A single mother with a journalism degree and a tendency to ask too many questions. The iron gates creaked open, slowly, too slowly, like even they were hesitant to let us back in. Sophie leaned against the window of the car, her breath fogging up the glass. "Is that where Grandma Vivian lives?" she asked. "That's where a lot of people pretend to live," I muttered under my breath. "But yes, that's where she lives." I forced a smile. "She's excited to see you." Sophie was only 7, too young to remember how tight-lipped Vivian was at Thomas's funeral, how her handshake with me was colder than the snow around us. But I remembered. The Whitmore estate looked the same, too perfect to be real. 3 stories of white colonial arrogance perched on a hill overlooking Lake Willoughby. Its shutters had just been repainted. I could still smell the latex through the frost. Somewhere inside that mansion were secrets I hadn't wanted to touch. But this time I wasn't here for them. I was here because Sophie needed a break. Or maybe because I finally wanted to end this unfinished chapter. Vivian greeted us at the door like a woman used to welcoming senators and stabbing them in the back with a smile. "Eliza," she said, air-kissing my cheek, then turning to Sophie. "And look at you, darling. Taller than I imagined. Come in before you catch a cold. We wouldn't want that. No hugs, just protocol." I held my daughter's small hand as we entered the house that once judged my shoes and corrected my grammar over dinner. Inside, the decor was exactly as I remembered: polished cherrywood floors, oil portraits of ancestors I never met, and a chandelier that cost more than my first apartment in Queens. Preston Thomas's cousin came down the stairs like he'd just stepped off a political stage. His voice still had that fake warmth, the kind that made you feel sticky. "Eliza, didn't think we'd see you here again." "I didn't either," I replied flatly. "But Sophie wanted to meet the family." "Of course," he said, kneeling in front of her. "You have your father's eyes. I'm sure he'd be proud." I looked away. I didn't want to cry, not here, not in front of them. "Your room is prepared upstairs," Vivian said. "We'll have supper at 7. And Eliza, try not to bring any of your New York energy into the dining room. The senator may stop by tonight." Right. Her usual way of telling me to stay invisible. But this time I didn't plan to shrink. Upstairs, the guest room felt more like a dollhouse than a space meant for real people. Fresh linens, sterile air, and a copy of Good Housekeeping from 2019. Sophie spun in a small circle and giggled. "It smells like flowers." "That's called lavender and oppression," I said with a smirk. She didn't get the joke, of course. After unpacking, I wandered to the window. The lake shimmered beneath the late afternoon sun, still frozen at its edges. Down below, I spotted the gardener Jonas. He was still here. He must have been nearly 70. He looked up, and for a moment our eyes met. There was something in his expression, recognition, and maybe something else. Something like warning. Dinner was predictably exquisite and excruciating. Vivian ran conversation like a courtroom, asking questions designed to corner, not connect. "Still working for that publication, Eliza?" she asked, between bites of lamb. "You mean the New York Sentinel, where I cover financial corruption and government fraud?" "Charming," she said, sipping wine. "I always thought journalism was for people who couldn't quite cut it in law." I smiled. "And philanthropy is for people who need a tax write-off." Preston choked on his wine. Jonas, from his place near the back door, let out the faintest cough that could have passed as a laugh. Later that night, while Sophie slept beside me wrapped in blankets and innocence, I stared at the ceiling, haunted by the weight in my chest. Something felt wrong. This trip wasn't just a reunion. There was a game being played, and I wasn't sure what part I was cast in yet. The next morning I found Jonas near the greenhouse, pruning dead rose bushes. "Still keeping this place alive?" I asked. He looked up, squinting. "Barely. Some roots rot from the inside. You can trim the surface all you want, but the disease always shows itself in time." He wiped his gloves. "You shouldn't be here, Miss Eliza. Not with her." "What are you talking about? They're not done with you. Vivian's planning something. She thinks you've forgotten. But this house remembers." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the wind. "What exactly is it, remembering?" Jonas hesitated, then reached into his coat and handed me a small battered envelope. "Your husband trusted me. He left this before he died. Told me to give it to you when the time was right." I turned the envelope over. No name. Just a seal I recognized from Thomas's private journals, his initials etched into wax. "Why didn't you give it to me sooner?" I whispered. "Because I hoped you'd never come back." Inside the envelope was a flash drive, and a single line written in Thomas's handwriting. "If you're reading this, it means I've failed to protect you." I looked up at Jonas, heart pounding. "What's on this drive?" He looked at me for a long time, then said quietly, "Proof of what they did and why he died." I didn't open the flash drive immediately. I sat on the edge of the greenhouse bench, that envelope still trembling slightly in my hand, feeling like I was holding a match over gasoline. My fingers were numb, but not from the cold. Jonas was already walking away, his shoulders hunched as if he'd just given up a piece of his soul. I watched him disappear behind the row of hydrangeas, knowing full well he wouldn't answer any more questions. Not yet. Back in the guest room, I locked the door. Sophie was playing with her sketchbook by the window, the sunlight catching the edge of her blonde hair, making her look angelic, so unlike this place. "Mommy, why is that grandma lady so shiny?" she asked, not looking up. "You mean Vivian?" I smiled softly. "She's the kind of person who polishes everything on the outside so people don't ask what's rotting underneath. Like apples that look good but have worms inside." "Exactly." I waited until Sophie fell asleep for her afternoon nap, then pulled out my laptop, plugged in the drive, and held my breath. It wasn't locked. No password. Just a single folder named "If They Win." My stomach turned. Inside audio files, scans of financial documents, a few grainy photos, and one video. I clicked play. Thomas sat in the driver's seat of his old Subaru, the interior light flickering. He looked tired, not just from lack of sleep, but soul-tired. "Eliza," he said into the camera, his voice low. "If you're watching this, I'm probably gone. Or silenced. And that's not melodrama. It's the truth." He looked over his shoulder like he was expecting someone. "I've been digging into the Whitmore Foundation's numbers. The Vermont accounts are clean, but the offshore ones Cayman. Luxembourg. Even a dummy shell in Panama. Preston's name is on several, but the emails trace back to Vivian's private server. She's been laundering money. Millions. Through charities. Using children's hospitals as fronts." My throat went dry. Thomas had always been the golden boy, but I'd never realized how much risk he'd been willing to take. I was going to go to the board, to the feds, but someone found out. I don't know who. Maybe Preston, maybe Vivian herself. But suddenly my brakes gave out last week on the back road near Willoughby Hill. I chalked it up to luck, but it wasn't. He paused. "If I don't make it to next week's board meeting, I want you to have this. I want you to finish what I couldn't." I closed the laptop. The air felt heavier than before. My husband hadn't just died in a car accident. He'd been hunted. I needed help, but not from anyone in that house. So I called Emma. Emma Whitmore. The family's black sheep. Vivian's niece. Artistic, queer, and ostracized for not playing the Whitmore game. She hadn't set foot on the estate in 6 years. But when I called, she picked up on the second ring. "You're there," she said, skipping hello. "With Sophie?" "Yeah," I whispered. "Emma, it wasn't an accident. Thomas, he was killed." Silence, then a sharp inhale. "Meet me, tomorrow. 10 a.m., the old boathouse by the lake. You remember it?" How could I forget? The next morning I told Vivian we were taking Sophie ice skating in town. She smiled too easily. What a charming idea. Be careful. Ice can be so treacherous. Emma was already at the boathouse when I arrived. She looked different, short hair, now sharper eyes. But her hug felt the same. "You look like hell," she said. "You smell like paint thinner," I shot back. "Balance." She pulled me inside where she'd set up a small heater canvases and an old coffee pot that probably hadn't been cleaned since 2017. "Show me what you've got," she said. I handed her the flash drive. She opened it on her battered tablet. Her eyes scanned quickly. Jesus, this is enough to burn the whole family to the ground. "I don't want to burn them," I said. "I want justice. For Thomas, for Sophie, and for every kid who never got the money meant for them." She looked up. "Then we'll need to play smart. They'll deny everything. Vivian has senators on speed dial. Preston's a PR assassin. You can't just walk into a courtroom and drop this." So what do? We build a stage. We give them a performance they can't ignore. And we start with the will. The will. Thomas's last will and testament. Vivian had it sealed, but Thomas gave me a copy. My heart skipped. "What does it say?" Emma grinned sharp and defiant. "It says Sophie inherits 51% of the Whitmore Foundation voting shares upon her 10th birthday, with you as legal guardian trustee." I went cold. Then why didn't anyone tell me? Because if you knew, they couldn't control you. Just then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You should have stayed away, Eliza. Some stories are better left buried." I showed it to Emma. Her face paled. "We have to move fast. If they know you're onto them, they won't wait." I nodded, but my blood ran like ice. Because I just noticed something else. In the background of that threatening message, barely visible in the blurred image, was the edge of Sophie's scarf, the one she was wearing this morning, and she was supposed to be with Jonas. The SUV hit a patch of black ice as I swerved off the Whitmore Estate's private road tires, grinding, heart-pounding like a war drum. Sophie's scarf. That was her scarf. And I hadn't seen her since this morning. Jonas had said he'd take her to the town's winter market. But I knew Jonas. He didn't text. He didn't own a phone that could send that kind of picture, which meant someone else was watching, someone close. I called his number twice. No answer. My third call bounced to voicemail. I felt like screaming. My knuckles were white against the steering wheel as I pushed past the 20-mile speed limit and tore through the back roads toward the town square. I kept telling myself she was okay, that Jonas wouldn't let anything happen. But deep inside a part of me, the mother animal part, knew something was off. I parked half on the sidewalk and bolted out. The market was still buzzing. Children on skates, couples sipping cider. But no Jonas, no Sophie. I ran past the food stalls, past the makeshift Santa's cabin. My breath short each heartbeat like a countdown. Then I heard a voice. Eliza, Emma. Running toward me from the south end, coat half-buttoned, boots barely tied. She skidded to a stop, panting. "They have her," she said. Vivian took her. Preston staged the trip with Jonas as cover. Jonas sent me a voicemail. He said he got jumped leaving the florist shop. My vision blurred with red. "Where is she?" "I don't know, but I have a guess. Remember the Whitmore hunting lodge? The one they don't list on the estate map? It's where they hold private meetings during campaign seasons." "Get in," I growled. We drove in silence. I gripped the wheel like a lifeline. Emma was shaking, but her voice was steady. "This is Vivian's endgame. She knew Thomas left something. She must have figured out you had the will. Sophie isn't just leverage. She's the legal key to the foundation. Without her, there's no guardian trustee. The shares default to the board. My teeth clenched. They want to dissolve Thomas's vote before it activates. The lodge sat deep in the woods, past a gated path most guests never saw. A single light flickered in the upper window. I parked in the tree line cut to the engine. No phones, no signals, no backup. Emma checked her coat pocket. Pepper spray and a broken moral compass, that's all I brought. We crept towards the rear entrance. The snow crunched too loudly under our boots. I remembered the layout from a Christmas gathering, years ago, open foyer den to the left study with a liquor cabinet to the right. A staircase that creaked on the third step. We slipped inside. Dim lamps cast long shadows. The silence was heavy, almost staged. Then movement upstairs. A low voice. I held up a hand. Emma nodded. We moved toward the staircase slowly, each step measured. Halfway up, I heard Sophie. Her voice was small but clear. I want to go home. I couldn't breathe. Then Vivian's voice sharp as glass. You are home, darling. You're a Whitmore. It's time you learned what that means. I didn't wait. I charged. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, Sophie sitting on a chaise, hands clenched around her stuffed owl. Vivian standing over her like a marble statue. Preston seated with a tumbler of scotch, looking far too relaxed for a man committing felony-level abduction. Step away from her, I snapped. Vivian turned unsurprised. Eliza, you always did have poor timing. I said step away from her. My voice didn't waver. Preston chuckled. You really think this is going to play your way? You break in here, rescue your daughter, and upload your sob story to YouTube. Do you understand what you're walking into? I do now, I said, reaching into my coat. Because I'm not alone anymore. From behind me, Emma raised her phone. Live. Right now. Broadcasting to 3 platforms. If you so much as blink wrong, you'll be viral by breakfast. Preston's smirk faltered. Vivian's eyes narrowed. You foolish girl. You think you can bring us down with some cheap stunt? No, I said, but I can bring you down with this. I tossed a printed document onto the floor, Thomas's sealed will. It's certified. It's legal. And it names me as Sophie's guardian and trustee of her voting rights. Effective immediately due to danger of duress. Preston went pale. Vivian stepped forward, face tight. This isn't about family. It's about legacy. You were never part of this world, Eliza. You don't understand what sacrifice means. No, I said I understand exactly what it means. Thomas sacrificed everything to keep this family honest. You killed that. But Sophie, she still has a chance. Sophie ran into my arms, burying her face in my coat. I could feel her shaking. I held her tighter than I'd ever held anyone. And then, crash. The front door exploded inward. Police. At least 4 officers stormed in, led by a state investigator. Vivian Whitmore, 1, said you're under investigation for conspiracy embezzlement and child endangerment. Please step away from the child. Vivian didn't move. Her face cracked, not from fear, but from disbelief. Emma whispered, I sent the drive to the Vermont Attorney General last night. I almost laughed. But then came the twist I hadn't expected. The investigator turned toward me. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with us too. We need to ask you some questions about the offshore files that were traced back to your IP this morning. My blood ran cold. Because I hadn't uploaded anything. Someone was framing me. The flashing red and blue lights reflected off the icicles hanging from the lodge's gutters, distorting everything around me into chaos. I stood there frozen, holding Sophie as the words, "We need to ask you some questions," echoed in my ears like the slow toll of a bell. I couldn't respond, couldn't even feel my legs. The only thing grounding me was the weight of Sophie's arms around my neck, her tiny voice whispering "Mommy," like she didn't know whether to be scared or brave. Emma stepped forward, voice laced with fury. This is insane. She's the whistleblower, not the criminal. But the investigator didn't blink. We traced several of the leaked files, the ones containing fake donation records, to an IP registered in Eliza Moore's name. The logs match a login from this morning around 12 a.m. That's impossible, I said. I was with Emma. We were at the boathouse going through Thomas's files. Ask her. Ask anyone. We will, he replied. But until we sort this out, we need you to come downtown for questioning. I handed Sophie to Emma slowly, my fingers trembling. Don't let them take her. They won't. Emma promised. I've got her. The cuffs were cold against my wrists, and that click, that awful final sound, broke something inside me. For the second time in my life, I was being punished for telling the truth. The police cruiser felt like a coffin on wheels. I stared out the window, my mind racing. Who had access to the files? Who would gain anything by framing me? Vivian was in handcuffs. Preston was being read his rights, and Emma was my only real ally. Or so I thought. Until I remembered something that twisted my stomach into knots. The e-tool? Thomas left me. I never encrypted it, never even password protected the folder. But I had left it plugged into my laptop, and that laptop had been in our guest room, alone, for over 4 hours while I searched for Sophie. Someone had access. Back at the station, the questions came fast. Have you ever visited the Cayman Islands, Num? Do you have an account ending in 4452 under the name Thomas J. Whitmore Foundation, LLC? Num. Did you upload the files marked Orchid Pipeline to the email address eliza.moore.leaks@protonmail.com? Absolutely not. But even as I answered, the realization crept in like frostbite. This wasn't just a frame-up. It was premeditated. Someone had built a second story, a false narrative, and released it just early enough to make me look guilty. 3 hours in a different officer came in. Younger, less rehearsed. He looked nervous. There's been a development, he said. We found security footage from the Whitmore Estate's West Wing entrance. A man, roughly mid-60s, used your guest keycard to enter your room this morning. My pulse kicked. Jonas. We're trying to identify him. The image is blurry, but he left a note. In the trash. He handed me a sealed plastic bag. Inside, a crumpled piece of stationery from the estate's desk. The words scratched hastily. Forgive me. They threatened my son. I had no choice. I felt the room tip sideways. Jonas. He'd been with the family since before Thomas was born. Loyal to a fault. But he had a son, an ex-con. Quietly living in upstate New York under a new name. I remembered hearing whispers years ago about a plea deal gone wrong, a judge with Whitmore ties. It all clicked. They'd found Jonas's weak point, and squeezed. The detective looked at me cautious. It doesn't clear you completely, but it's helpful. I need to call my lawyer, I said. He nodded. By the time I was released, night had swallowed Vermont whole. Snow fell in soft, unbothered flurries, nature's indifference to my unravelling life. I stepped out into the cold and saw Emma's car already waiting. She rushed toward me, wrapped me in a hug. They let you go for now. They found something. A note. From Jonas. Yeah, he's compromised. Emma nodded slowly. I think I know where he went. We drove in silence again, this time heading northwest toward an old ranger cabin near the state forest, one Thomas used to escape to when the estate became unbearable. It wasn't on any map, but Jonas knew it. So did Emma. As we drove, she broke the silence. I didn't tell you this before because I wasn't sure, but I found something else. In one of the audio files Thomas recorded. She tapped her phone, pulled up the file. Thomas's voice crackled to life. They'll come after Eliza, maybe even frame her. But if that happens, listen for the word orchid. That's the code. The fake accounts are listed under that name. If you see Orchid Pipeline in any email headers, it wasn't her. It was someone else. The same name used in the email I was accused of sending. Orchid, a Whitmore Foundation shell company. I exhaled slowly, fury blooming behind my ribcage like a storm. He knew this was coming. We reached the cabin. The air was still, except for the smoke trailing out of the chimney. Emma knocked. No response. Then the door opened a crack, and Jonas's weathered face appeared in the sliver. I know he said before we even spoke. I know I ruined everything. I didn't yell, didn't cry. Why? They showed me photos, he whispered, of my boy. Held in ICE detention, said they'd make sure he disappeared if I didn't help them set you up. I copied the files, used your IP, and sent the decoys. But I left them breadcrumbs. I prayed you'd find them before it was too late. You're going to testify, Emma said flatly. You're going to clear her name. I will, he said. But you need to act fast. There's something else I overheard. Preston's making a move. He's trying to seize control of the Foundation, claim emergency power from the board. He's calling for a vote tomorrow. He says Eliza's unstable, dangerous, unfit to act as guardian. I blinked. He's trying to strip me of Sophie. Jonas nodded. He's got one more card, and he's about to play it. The Whitmore Foundation boardroom hadn't changed in 20 years. Walnut-panelled walls, brass light fixtures shaped like torches, as if legacy could be lit by design. The long, oval table, polished daily, could seat 20, but there were only 11 nameplates this morning. One of them, engraved in silver, read, Guardian Trustee Eliza Moore. But it had been moved, set off to the side. Like I was expected to sit as a spectator in a trial meant to strip me of everything. Preston stood at the head of the table, crisp in a navy suit, silk tie, knotted with surgical precision. His face was calm, confident, until he saw me walk in, flanked by Emma and Jonas. His jaw twitched just once. The board's chairman, a frail man, with Nixon-era hair, and a voice that rasped like dry leaves, began. We're gathered to vote on a temporary assignment of Sophie Whitmore's guardianship and voting proxy pending an investigation into allegations of misconduct against Ms. Moore. I stepped forward. Before you vote on my competence as a mother, I'd like the right to speak. Preston made a show of consulting papers. Ms. Moore is currently under federal scrutiny for cybercrimes and asset manipulation. I opened the laptop I brought and connected it to the projection screen. And here's proof that those charges were manufactured. The metadata from the Orchid Pipeline files shows they were uploaded at a time when I was not in possession of the files, and by a machine registered to a different network entirely. Jonas cleared his throat and stood. That network belongs to me. I was coerced, threatened with my son's life, but I came forward voluntarily. And I'll testify under oath. The room shifted. Preston's jaw tightened. Vivian wasn't there, still under house arrest, awaiting indictment, but I could feel her presence in the tension that lingered. I turned to the board. You may not like me. I didn't come from money. I'm not a legacy name. But I was Thomas's wife. Sophie is his daughter. And his will signed, notarized, and unsealed grants me full authority until she's of age. If you override that, you're not just betraying his wishes. You're enabling a coup. The chairman paused. We've seen the will, yes, but legal disputes are outside our authority. Our concern is the Foundation's stability and reputation. Emma stepped up beside me, her voice low but steady. And reputation means covering up embezzlement, turning a blind eye to false imprisonment. Ask yourselves what is more damaging, the truth or the lie you're all pretending never happened. I clicked play on the audio. Thomas recorded the one where he named names, dates, amounts. The room went dead silent. A woman from the end of the table, a retired judge I remembered, leaned forward. Why now, Preston? Why call this vote less than 24 hours after the FBI opened an inquiry into the Foundation's Cayman accounts? Preston's voice remained smooth, but I saw the panic creeping into his eyes. because we must act quickly to preserve what Thomas built. No, I said. You're trying to preserve what you stole. Another board member, an older man with liver spots and a Harvard pin, raised his hand. I move we delay the vote until a neutral arbitrator can assess the validity of all claims. Preston's voice sharpened. That delay puts our capital at risk. Donors will flee. Let them, Emma snapped. The ones who stay will be the ones who believe in truth, not bloodlines. Then came the moment I didn't expect. The chairman turned to me. Miss Moore, one last question. Did you love Thomas? The room held its breath. Yes, I said, with everything I had, and I'm still honoring him, even if it costs me everything. He nodded, then looked around the table. All those in favor of postponing the vote pending legal review, raise your hands. 7. Preston's hand stayed down. So did 3 others. But he'd lost. The chairman spoke. Motion carried. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. But it wasn't over. Preston leaned toward me, voice low and venomous. This isn't the end, Eliza. You're a scandal waiting to happen. And Sophie, she's already being watched. I stared him down. I'm not afraid of you anymore. As I turned to leave, Emma caught up beside me. You did it. No, I said, wrapping an arm around Sophie's waiting shoulders. We did, but then my phone buzzed. A text. No number, just an image. The inside of a hospital room. A patient chart with Emma Whitmore printed on it. And a note. You think the vote stopped us. You forgot what else she's hiding. The photo on my phone didn't make sense at first. A hospital room. A chart with Emma's name. But Emma was standing right beside me, alive, sharp-tongued as ever. Is this a threat? I asked, handing her the phone. Her face went pale, her fingers tightening around the edges. Where did you get this? Texted. No number. This was from 6 years ago, she whispered. I was hospitalized after the family cut me off. Depression, isolation. I never told anyone, not even Thomas. Why are they sending it now to remind me what I used to be, she said quietly. Or to warn you that I could still be hiding something. We were in the car already. Sophie buckled in the back, humming to herself, while Emma stared straight ahead like she was watching her own reflection blur. There's something I didn't tell you, she said finally. I found another file on that flash drive. I hid it. Why? Because it implicates someone who's still alive. Someone Sophie loves. My stomach dropped. Who? She hesitated. Your mother. I almost slammed the brakes. What are you talking about? My mother died when Sophie was 2. No, Emma said. That's the story you were told. But she's not dead. She's in a facility in New Hampshire, under a different name. That's not possible. She was involved with the foundation years ago, before you and Thomas even met. She worked as a legal consultant. Then she threatened to go public. Vivian arranged for her to be evaluated, declared mentally unstable. Thomas discovered it just before he died. That's what that file is. A video confession. I pulled over. Snow was falling again. Quiet. Apathetic. My hands were shaking. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wasn't sure you were ready? But now you need to see it. She opened the file. My mother's face appeared age-weary, but unmistakably hers. She looked directly at the camera. If anyone ever finds this, I'm sorry. I didn't fight hard enough. I tried to expose Vivian when I realized what she was doing with the money. But they had judges in their pocket. They said I was unstable, that I had postpartum psychosis. They took my daughter from me. I was institutionalized without a trial. But I remember everything. I remember you, Eliza. You were 3. You had a stuffed giraffe you wouldn't sleep without, and you called me Mum. I'm so sorry I disappeared. My breath caught in my throat. Emma didn't speak. She just let it play. I don't know if Thomas ever found this, but if he did and he's gone, it's up to you. The Whitmores don't destroy people with guns or fire. They use memory. They erase you. Don't let them erase you too. The screen faded to black. I sat frozen for a long time, my fingers curled into fists. We're going to that facility, I said. Right now. It was a quiet place outside Concord. Not a hospital, not really a private institution funded by donors who wanted privacy above progress. When we arrived, the receptionist gave us the name. She was registered under Marion Blake. It was her, my mother. She'd been there for 23 years. Sedated, diagnosed, dismissed. They let me see her. She looked up when I entered. Her eyes, grey and cautious, searched my face, like she wasn't sure if she was dreaming. "Eliza," she said. I dropped to my knees. "It's me, I'm here." She cupped my cheek like no time had passed. "I knew you'd come." 3 days later, everything unraveled at once. Jonas's testimony hit the press. The Orchid files were verified by the FBI. Preston tried to flee to Canada. He was intercepted at the border with a duffel bag of burner phones and a briefcase of forged passports. Vivian was officially indicted on 4 counts of financial conspiracy, 1 count of unlawful detainment, and obstruction of justice. The foundation board voted to restructure. Emma was offered a seat. She declined, said she was done living under chandeliers and oil portraits. And me, I was offered a book deal, not about the scandal, but about survival. About how people like us women, who lose everything and still keep standing, rewrite the story by living it louder. Sophie was quiet through all of it. She didn't understand the full weight of what had happened, not yet, but she knew enough. One night, as I tucked her into bed, she whispered, "Mommy, are we safe now?" I paused. "I think we're safer than we've ever been." She reached for her owl, the same one she clutched in that lodge. "Can Grandma Marion come live with us?" My throat tightened. Maybe not right away, but she'll be part of our lives now, like she always should have been. As I turned off the light, Sophie asked one more question. "Is it over?" I looked out the window at the snow falling softly, covering the past like a fresh page. "No," I said. "It's just beginning." Story 2. After announcing her pregnancy, on the day I was promoted, my cousin's wife made me move out or pay rent. She was unaware, however, that I own the house in which we currently reside. Okay, read it. About a year has passed after this incident, and I continue to receive direct messages asking for the complete breakdown. This shit became so crazy that I had to make a disposable account. This is what transpired. A brief introduction of myself. I'm Joseph, a 28-year-old man who works as a senior animator for a mid-tier game studio. I make roughly $72,000 a year plus project bonuses. I drive a paid-off Honda CR-V, work from home, and basically keep my head down and take care of myself. When I was 20, my entire world fell apart. A head-on collision on I-75 claimed the lives of parents. An intoxicated driver ran a red light while driving at 70 mph in a 35 mph zone. Mum passed away instantly, before his brain swelling became too severe. Dad spent 3 days in the intensive care unit. I was a junior at State University, surviving on pizza and energy drinks while studying digital arts. Everything changed when I received the call. The 22-year-old driver, with a suspended license, has committed 3 DUIs. Served 8 years, 4 of which were for good behavior. I made sure he knew I was watching and kept track of his release date, so I know. However, that is a different matter. During those difficult months, my dad's younger brother, Uncle Victor, and his wife Carmen became my pillar of support. During Dad's 3-day hospitalization, they worked 12-hour shifts and were at the hospital every day. My parents were therefore never left alone. During the day, Victor would sit with his father and read him job updates and sports scores as if he could still hear them. Carmen would discuss about TV shows and family rumors while brushing Mom's hair and doing her nails. Victor held my hand as I signed the paperwork after the doctors declared that there was no more brain activity and that it was time to make a decision. I was 20 years old, an orphan, and unsure of what in the world I should do next. Victor paid for the burial in advance because insurance takes a very long time. the estate reached a settlement of about $950,000. Policies for life insurance. Dad's investment 401k accounts. After paying off their bills and burial expenses, I couldn't bear to preserve their house or Dad's collection of vintage motorcycles. I was down to roughly $850,000. For a college student who had been living on a weekly grocery budget of $50, this is not terrible. Here's the problem though. Grief cannot be solved by money. Furthermore, it doesn't educate you how to be an adult right away. I was missing courses eating takeout for every meal and generally collapsing while sitting in a large vacant rental home. Victor took note and offered what at the time seemed like a sensible solution. Why don't you spend some time living with us? You shouldn't be alone right now because Carmen is constantly cooking for a crowd, just till you graduate and decide what to do next. Investing in real estate was recommended by my financial advisor, so I came onto this location. 2 acres in a nice area, 4 bedrooms, and a 3-car garage. Ideal for a family. I made Uncle Victor an offer and paid $420,000 for the house outright. I could have them live there. They would assist me in navigating adult life when I completed college and began my profession, helping me with maintenance utilities and property taxes. Uncle Victor became the much-needed father role in my life, teaching me how to properly grill a steak invest and maintain my automobile. Aunt Carmen made sure I remembered important dates, ate veggies, and did my laundry correctly. At 24 to 28, their son Jacob was like the brother I had always desired. We were raised more like twins than cousins, though. We would occasionally go on double dates, play games together, and work on automobiles in the garage. He was working part-time at a tax preparation agency and attending the nearby community college to study accounting in order to earn his CPA license. The setup was ideal. Every Sunday, the family has dinner. Vacations that truly felt like holidays, and a network of support that kept me from slipping into addiction or sadness after my parents passed away. We were like a real-life sitcom family for 5 years. Then, at an accounting conference, Jacob ran into Brianna Walsh. Sweet 26-year-old Brianna, who drives a leased BMW 3 Series that her father co-signed for, has blonde hair, false nails, and says she works as a marketing coordinator. It seems remarkable until you learn that she works as a receptionist for a tiny local company, answering phones and maintaining social media accounts, earning $36,000. However, she sees herself as the female equivalent of Don Draper from the beginning. I was tense because of the intensity this woman exuded, just entitled not blatantly bitchy. She wore a tailor suit to her job as a receptionist and had a business degree from a third-tier public university as if the world owed her something. She talked about her job path and how she was developing her own brand during the entire Sunday dinner when Jacob first took her. She photographed our meals for her Instagram, complained that the beverage wasn't organic, and recommended that the dining room's design be updated because it was dated. Being the saint that she is, Carmen simply nodded and grinned. Victor remained silent despite rolling his eyes. Jacob appeared happier than I had seen him in a long time, so I bit my tongue. However, the warning signs were present from the start. Without knocking, she would enter the house. Treat Carmen as though she were a paid servant. Carmen, please get me some sparkling water. You kept making subtle jabs at the house's lack of modernity and age, always wearing this phony, charming smile. Observing her manipulate Jacob was the worst part. When he wanted to spend time with me, she would sulk. He feels guilty about not spending enough money on her and is always comparing himself to her friends' partners who have better automobiles or higher incomes. However, Jacob accepted it all with a smile and began working more hours to support her lifestyle demands after being pussy-whipped beyond belief. I should have spoken up then, but I convinced myself it was none of my business and kept my mouth shut. My first error was that. I had one of the best days of my life before everything went to crap. At 10:47 a.m., I received the email about the promotion. On a Tuesday, $72,000 base pay, plus project bonuses for a senior animator. Completely remote job with the opportunity of quarterly travel. For 18 months, I had been battling for this job against applicants from Pixar and Disney Studios. It was like winning the jackpot when I got it. I quickly contacted Uncle Victor. I can hardly control my excitement. I understand. Big Ray, a senior animator, works remotely. In fact, the man leapt into the phone. Victor is not a sentimental person. When he opens a second drink during Sunday football, he views it as a celebration. However, it was evident in his voice that he was truly proud. My boy is that. Carmen, come on in. Joseph was promoted. In the background, I could hear Aunt Carmen yelling with delight. Her voice then entered the speaker. Tonight is our celebration dinner. Your preferred ribs. I'm also preparing your favorite chocolate cake. All that trouble is unnecessary for you. Bullshit. Stop me, Victor. This is enormous. I'm telling Jacob to get home early over the phone right now. We're doing it correctly. Victor's willingness to interfere with Jacob's work schedule demonstrated how serious this was. For the previous 8 months, Jacob had been working 60 to 70-hour weeks at his accounting business in an attempt to become a partner before turning 30. The man had essentially quit attending family dinners because he was so anxious that he had begun to experience migraines due to stress. However, Victor managed to perform his magic. By 6 p.m., Jacob was carrying flowers and a bottle for Carmen as he entered the front door. He was behaving more like himself than I had noticed in months. This electrifying force permeated the entire house. Carmen had gone all Martha Stewart complete, with candles, napkins, and fine china. My favourite dinner was prepared by her. Victor had bought a case of artisan drinks from that pricey downtown brewery. Even Brianna appeared to be feeling upbeat. Rather of browsing through her phone, she was actively engaging in conversations. Inquiring in depth about my new employer, the remote work arrangement, and whether stock options will be granted. You will essentially be working from home all the time then, she inquired. It's quite practical. No office politics, no commute. Total adaptability. Basically, I can work from any location with good internet though. I might have to visit the Austin office once every 3 months. That type of independence must be pleasant. She spoke with what seemed like sincere excitement. Jacob has been discussing his search for a more work-life balance. For the following hour, Victor told me embarrassing anecdotes about my adolescence as we caught up like old times. Carmen displaying images from her gardening club. Jacob is genuinely amused by my jokes. In months, for the first time. We had the feeling of being a whole family once more. It was too good to last, and I should have known it. The main meal was almost finished when Brianna abruptly stopped eating. Her face took on a strange, concentrated expression as she put down her fork and laid her palms flat on the table. As everyone being aware of her peculiar behaviour, the talk slowly died down. I want to share something with everyone. With a dramatic tone that made my skin crawl, she made the announcement. There was utter silence at the table. Victor put his drink down. Carmen gave up washing dishes. Jacob was perplexed as though he had missed a little of a discussion. Brianna inhaled deeply. She made sure she had everyone's full attention by looking around the table before flashing the largest, most fake smile I'd ever seen. I'm expecting a child. It was an immediate and explosive reaction. Victor leaped out of his seat with such rapidity. Carmen rushed around the table to give Brianna a hug as she broke down in happy emotions. In 3 seconds, Jacob's faces changed, around 6 times astonishment, bewilderment, incredulity, and then unadulterated ecstasy. Are you serious? He stared at Brianna's stomach and continued to question. Are you serious? 8 weeks, Brianna said with pride. I wanted to hold off on telling anyone until I was certain. I was truly delighted for them. I knew that Jacob had been under a lot of stress due to his infertility issues, as he and Brianna had been trying for nearly 2 years. He had told me about the tests, the doctor's appointments, and the increasing stress. The news could not have been better. Immediately plans began to race through my head. We might finish the basement as a playroom and turn the extra room next to their bedroom into a nursery. I was already considering what type of uncle I wanted to be and mentally shopped for baby presents. Brianna's expression changed slightly at that point. She gave me a sharp glance and her mask briefly came off entirely. Actually, she remarked, her tone becoming more solemn, as a family we need to talk about something else. There was a flutter of joyful energy in the room. Slowly, Victor took a seat again. Carmen's tears ceased. Jacob appeared perplexed once more. She had just ensured that the detonation would have the greatest possible impact before dropping the bomb. Joseph needs to get a home of his own, in my opinion. He now has a job. Brianna keeps this calculating expression on her face as she looks straight at me. A well-paying position. Additionally, having a single male in the house will be inappropriate with the impending baby. I attempt to keep things cool and suggest there won't be any problems. I can help when the baby is born. If you folks need more space, I could even finish the basement. When I have this kid, Brianna gives me a look that may make me cry. I'll be nursing all day and all night. I can't worry about a guy noticing that I'm just partially dressed at 3 a.m. A man? I'm a guy after 8 years of family dinners. She's not finished, though. Joseph, I don't mean to be critical, but you've lived here since college. You need to grow up and move out, don't you think? As if speaking to a slow child, she tilts her head. You've had years of assistance from your uncle and aunt. They are entitled to reclaim their home. Their home, I realized then that this bitch had gone utterly insane. She goes on to say that young guys nowadays lack ambition. She's finally getting into her stride. Instead of stealing from family, perhaps it's time you developed some self-respect and began acting like an adult. Uncle Victor's expression turned scarlet. That's sufficient. You are completely out of line. However, Jacob leaps to the defense of his pregnant princess. Dad, relax. Because she is pregnant, she is emotional. Besides, she's not totally incorrect. Uncle Victor loses his mind entirely, begins shouting insults and ingratitude at Jacob. Regarding establishing boundaries, Jacob responds angrily. As I watch my family fall apart over dessert, and Brianna, the entire dinner turns into a yelling fight. As though she solved everyone's issues, she sits there grinning smugly. It's time to teach this bitch the truth. Brianna, this is what truly irritated me. I pretended to be a hopeless failure who had been squandering Uncle Victor's kindness for 8 years, as though they had been saints for tolerating me out of pure altruism. The reality: the house belonged to me. I received a $950,000 inheritance from my parents, following the settlement of their debts and burial expenses. I was down to roughly $850,000. I made Uncle Victor an offer and paid $420,000 for the house outright. I could have them live there. For 8 years, I would take care of the monthly upkeep utilities and property taxes. I've been covering repairs, utility bills, homeowners insurance, and property taxes. The recently installed roof. I completed the kitchen makeover Brianna had requested 2 years prior, complete with granite worktops and stainless steel equipment. The HVAC system that died last summer was me as well. Yes, me once again. Jacob was aware of some of this, but not all of it. In order to avoid strange family dynamics, Uncle Victor and I decided to keep the ownership details private. I guess that went horribly wrong. So here I am, sitting in a house I own, listening to Brianna lecture me about mooching and self-respect. I listened to her strategy while eating the food I had paid for. I was kicked out of my own house. It was breathtakingly audacious. I scanned the table. It's time to give Princess Brianna Jacob some realism. I sound more calmer than I actually am. Both of you are mistaken on a few points. As if I were going to offer an explanation. Brianna rolls her eyes. Well, let's get started. I own this house. In fact, she cackles, tosses her head back and laughs. What are you discussing? I acquired this house and invited your uncle and aunt to move in with me, so they have been here for years. The laughter stops. There are around 6 distinct expressions on Jacob's face. Hold on. What, is he serious? Dad. Uncle Victor nods as though he wishes to vanish. After his parents passed away, Joseph purchased the house so that the whole family could live together. The colour of Brianna's face changes from white to red, then back to white. She's unable to speak for the first time in her life. That isn't feasible. Jacob is finally under her control. Before we ever met, your parents were already here. Because when I purchased the property, I invited them to move in with me. The deed is in my name, I clarified. Every repair, every upgrade, every utility bill over the last 8 years. Me alone. The quiet goes on and on. As Brianna attempts to digest this knowledge, you can almost hear her brain short-circuiting. Are you claiming ownership of the entire house? She queries. The property, the house, and the vehicles in the garage. Apart from your own possessions, everything. Indeed. Her voice is already trembling as she tries to rally. Even if it's true, that is. It's been 3 years since Jacob and I moved in. Tenant rights are ours. As long as I let you, you are free to reside here, I interrupted her. Which is why I'm seriously evaluating Brianna's angry and humiliated facial expressions after tonight's little show about me being inappropriate and needing to mature. She is too arrogant to admit that she made a huge mistake. You wouldn't risk it. She lets out a hiss. I am expecting your nephew. I grinned as I reclined in my chair. Give me a try. She gives me a prolonged look, most likely attempting to determine whether I'm bluffing. Then, without saying another word, she gets up, shoots me a look that could melt steel, and storms upstairs. Jacob goes after her. He still has the appearance of having been struck by a brick. It should have been obvious to me that Brianna would do something really dumb. I simply didn't think she would do it the following day. Even though I was still furious when I woke up the following morning, I was resolved to act like an adult. We could sit down, perhaps, establish some boundaries and clear the air. Brianna was emotional and pregnant. Jacob found himself torn between his family and his wife. There must be a middle ground between us. On my first day at the new job, I set up my home office supplies and used video calls to connect with the remote colleagues. I didn't want family conflict to ruin my first impression, so I kept my phone on mute. A huge error. Around 7 p.m. I arrived home. I realized something was amiss right away, after celebrating with some local co-workers over celebration cocktails. It was very silent in the house. No music, no TV, no live sounds. Nothing but quiet. I tried my key as I approached the front door. It refused to turn. I thought maybe I had the wrong key, or was simply weary, so I tried again. Not at all. Not even the key would fit inside the lock correctly. It dawned on me then. The hair was modified by this bitch. I made my way to the rear entrance. The basement was even attempted by the side entrance. While I was away, all the locks had been changed. Upstairs, I noticed movement. With a huge, shit-eating grin on her face, Brianna emerges from the bedroom window. Leaning out like a villainous Disney princess, searching for something, she opens the window. She accuses everyone of being falsely innocent. Brianna opened the door. Not in my opinion. Now this is our home. Last night you admitted to yourself that you were thinking twice about allowing us to reside here. Well, I changed my mind as well. We're not going anywhere. Are you heading out? The sheer insolence. She was acting as though she had outwitted me and had changed the locks on my house. Before I contact the police, Brianna, you have precisely 10 seconds to open this door. Proceed. She responds with a shout. Give them a call. You're attempting to place me in a homeless situation while I'm 8 weeks pregnant. When I tell them you've been inappropriate with me, we'll see who they believe. In fact, she threatened to fabricate a story about me being unsuitable. Because of a house that wasn't even hers, this pregnant maniac was prepared to ruin my life. Probably believing she has just pulled off the theft of the century, she smashes the window shut and vanishes. Brianna was unaware that she had just waged war on the wrong man. For precisely 30 seconds, I stood on my driveway and allowed my anger to consume me. If she had 2 brain cells to rub together, the calmness should have frightened her. The first call. Professional explanations of the circumstances were given by the police. My property's locks had been unlawfully altered and someone was preventing me from entering. The dispatcher requested ownership documentation. I informed her that everything could be verified through county records and rattled out the property address and my social security number. Sir, we'll have units there in an hour. Call number 2. A thorough message regarding the unlawful lockout and possible false accusations was left by my attorney. Third, give my locksmith friend Randy a call. I did him a favour by designing his company's logo for free. Call number 4. Where are you now, Uncle Victor, just getting off of work? While your daughter-in-law threatened to tell the police that I was improper with her and change the locks on my house. A long silence. What did she do, I heard you? Police are on their way. It's going to become messy. Christ Jesus. I will attempt to contact Jacob. Do not bother. Last night he made his decision. 45 minutes later, 2 police cruisers arrived. Both officers had served in the military. I've probably dealt with domestic stuff like this before. I gave them a printed copy of the deed I had in my truck, showed them my ID, and accessed the property data on my phone. Everything looks fine, sir. Let's get this resolved. They approached and knocked on the front door. When Brianna finally opened up, she did it slowly, perhaps expecting they would grow weary and go. Her entire attitude shifted. What's happening? Trying to sound weak and perplexed, she asked. We confirmed, ma'am, that the complainant is the rightful owner of this property. According to state legislation, changing the locks without the owner's consent is an illegal lockout. However, I am expecting a child. She objected. He has treated me inappropriately. Ma'am, I don't feel secure. Do you possess any proof of improper conduct? Have any reports been submitted? Are there any witnesses? She flushed. Well, no. However, if you don't provide the property owner entrance to his house right away, you risk being arrested for unlawful lockout and criminal trespass. And the second cop came forward. You have 2 minutes to get your most important items and leave the area. When and if you can return will be decided by the property owner. Her face displayed every emotion imaginable. Panic rage, desperation, utter loathing. She was aware of her predicament. It's not over yet. She snatched up her keys and handbag and growled at me. I grinned and gave her a direct look. In fact, it's only getting started. The next 24 hours were vital. Brianna was likely crying to Jacob about my cruel behaviour at the time. I was doing my best work, assembling information and constructing a case. I was familiar with social media and digital platforms because I worked as an animator and I had access to research databases that most people aren't even aware exist. It was time to discover Brianna Walsh's true identity. Even worse than I had anticipated was what I discovered. With her designer clothes, false confidence, and financial position as determined by public records and credit monitoring organizations. This woman was a walking financial disaster. I found that she was $8,200 overdue on her BMW lease payments and had $52,400 in credit card debt spread across 7 different cards. In the last 5 years, there have been 2 evictions due to non-payment of rent. Based on her bank routing numbers from checks she had issued, which I could cross-reference, she owed $1,000 in student loan debt for a communications degree from a 3rd-tier state university. She had essentially no money in her checking account. Cross-referencing of LinkedIn public records and employment history was discovered. Summit Marketing's current marketing coordinator. Actually, she makes $36,000 a year as a receptionist. Dismissed from a prior position at a real estate company due to poor attendance. Dismissed from their previous position for falsifying their credentials. 9 months is the average length of employment. Legal matters. Court documents revealed a 380 DUI from April 2019 that she had somehow concealed from Jacob due to unpaid parking charges. A $2,100 judgment was rendered against her in a small claims court. Unpaid lease for furniture. Analysis of social media. It became quite intriguing at this point. After spending hours reviewing all of Brianna's posts on social media during the previous 12 months, I came up with the impression that she was leading a wholly false existence. Instagram pictures of my gorgeous kitchen, which I had renovated for $28,000. Once more, we're having Sunday supper in our dining room while unwinding in our stunning backyard. I paid to have my backyard landscaped. The best part, though, posts about working as a marketing professional and developing her brand, along with pictures of pricey meals, high-end handbags, and lavish trips that she was obviously unable to pay for with her real job. She had been fabricating a lifestyle for social media by exploiting my home, my family, and her credit cards. The delusions were astounding. Some simple social engineering led to the most destructive discovery. I posed as a worried friend on Facebook and contacted her sister to find out if she was aware of Brianna's housing predicament. The sister revealed everything Brianna had been preparing to throw me out for months because she believed I was a member of her social group. In fact, she had studied legislation pertaining to tenant rights, spoken with a lawyer regarding adverse possession, and was constructing a case that she and Jacob were the house's legitimate inhabitants. She intended to assert that I was merely a long-term visitor with no legal rights, that Jacob had inherited the tenancy when he moved here, and that Victor and Carmen were the original tenants. She had even done research on our state's homestead rights. Our dispute over dinner wasn't the reason for the lockout. It was the first stage of a planned house robbery. Equipped with this knowledge, I gave Jacob a call. We must speak face to face. The following evening, he appeared at my office coffee shop as though he hadn't slept for 48 hours. Excellent. Joseph, I'm really sorry about the locks, man. Brianna was feeling sentimental. Her thoughts were clouded. Quit talking and take a seat. I moved a folder made of manila across the table. For months, your wife has been preparing for this. As Jacob looked through the printouts I had assembled, his face turned white. I saw him learn that his wife was practically destitute, had lied about her employment, had a DUI conviction, and was drowning in debt. This, he said, this can't be right. She claimed to earn $55,000. She claimed to have great credit. Regarding everything I mentioned, your wife has been lying to you. Her employment earnings debts and criminal history. She has been scheming to take my property and has been using it as a prop on social media. Before I dropped the big bomb, I gave him a minute to process it. Jacob, she has been studying unfavorable possession laws. She sought legal advice on how to assert her rightful ownership of my home. There was no emotion in the lockout. It was planned. Jacob appeared on the verge of vomiting. God, please. Joseph, I didn't know. I promise you that none of this was known to me. I think you're real. I said. I meant it too. Jacob wasn't a scheming person, but he was many things. Here's the problem, though. Without understanding all the circumstances, you sided with her over your family. When she attacked me, you stood up for her, and you encouraged her to expel me. I am aware of my error. I was attempting to maintain harmony. You put pussy before family. I interrupted him. I took out another folder. This is what will take place. You have 30 days to find a place of your own with your dishonest, thieving wife. I adore Uncle Victor and Aunt Carmen, so I'll contribute to the transfer costs. However, you are no longer residing in my home. Jacob gazed at my prepared eviction notice. Please, Joseph, she is expecting a child. We don't have any cash on hand. Perhaps you ought to have considered that before your wife made the decision to launch war on me. How about if I spoke to her? What if she says she's sorry? Maybe we can figure something out." He stopped talking when I leaned back in my chair and gave him a glare. "Your wife threatened to ruin my name and profession, tried to take my house, and told the police that I was inappropriate. Nothing is going to be worked out. Normalcy cannot be restored. She now has to face the repercussions of her declaration of war." He appeared to be a broken man when he departed. It nearly made me feel terrible for him. Jacob called nearly 3 days later. He spoke in a hollow voice, defeated. "Joseph, we're going to leave. Please don't ruin Brianna entirely. She has promised to get an apartment. She is pregnant with my child. A wise decision." "You have 30 days, I said. I wasn't finished with Princess Brianna, though. By no means. You see, the problem with those who lead false lives is that they rely on the illusion to survive. Remove the props. When the lies are exposed, the entire house of cards collapses." Brianna had spent 3 years creating a false lifestyle that impressed her friends and followers by utilizing my home, my family, and my generosity. It was time to reveal her true self to the world. Social media exposure in Phase 1. I waited until Brianna and Jacob had located their flat and began packing. Then I hit. Do you recall all those pictures of her stunning house on Instagram? Over the past year, I would take screenshots of each and every one. Created a charming little collage with timestamps and comments that depicted her asserting control over my furnishings, kitchen, backyard, and house. I shared a thorough explanation PSA for anyone who knows Brianna Walsh on our local Facebook community group. For the past 3 years, this woman has been sharing photos of my property on social media, claiming it is hers when she is a visitor living there for free. She recently threatened to lie to the police about me and change the locks while I was at work in an attempt to seize the property. Since then, police have evicted her. I just wanted to confirm that everyone is aware of who they are interacting with. Within hours, the post went viral in our little community. The majority of the 140 shares and more than 280 comments came from co-workers, college pals, and distant family members who knew Brianna intimately. Because of her phony lifestyle posts, they were all making fun of her. She was now being recognized as a fraud by those she had spent years trying to win over. Professional repercussions in Phase 2. Brianna was employed at Summit Marketing, a small marketing company that took pride in its honest client interactions and genuine brand representation. Integrity and trust were the subject of an entire section of their company website. Using screenshots of Brianna's social media posts, her employment and financial documents that I had located, and a thorough explanation of how she had been lying about her work title, money, and lifestyle online, I sent an anonymous email to their HR department. Within 48 hours, they let her go. Financial repercussions in Phase 3. It seemed inevitable that her BMW would be repossessed. I chose to expedite the payment schedule even though she was already months behind. I sent the leasing firm her new apartment address and discreetly informed them of her job loss. On a Tuesday morning in front of all her new neighbours, they took the automobile back from the parking lot of the apartment complex. The outcomes 6 weeks following the lockout. Brianna had lost most of her friends and social circle, her job, her car, and her phony social media lifestyle. She went from living in a lovely home as a phony marketing executive to being a pregnant, unemployed lady in a studio apartment on the wrong side of town. During this time, Jacob made one attempt to call me and begged me to stop. She has come to her senses. "Joseph, this is excessive." She attempted to ruin my reputation and steal my house. I answered. When she declared war, she made her decision. She now has to deal with the fallout. But before deciding to commit several offences, the baby ought to have considered the baby. The nice thing about the entire process was that I didn't have to fabricate anything, lie, or exaggerate. All of the material I provided was entirely true and substantiated. I believed that the Brianna chapter of my life was finally over 6 months after things went to ruin. She was working part-time at a contact centre, living in a dingy studio apartment, and coping with the fallout from her decisions. Jacob appeared to have aged by 10 years and was working 2 jobs to support them. I felt sorry for him, but decisions have repercussions. Jacob's voice had changed, no longer dejected, as it had been for months when he called me one day. Furious. Uncooked. As if someone had just torn his entire universe apart once more. I have a question for you, Joseph, and I want you to tell me the truth, please. Was anyone ever brought home by Brianna? When did we move in together? My blood froze. What's going on? Jacob. Simply respond to the fucking question. Did she? I stopped and reflected, but I never saw anything tangible. She refused to disclose her whereabouts on a few occasions while she was out late. Long period of silence. Then I realized that the infant didn't resemble me. You mean that it doesn't resemble you? At 3 months old, Oliver is quite different from me. Not even by a small amount. Brianna has also been behaving strangely as a result. Becomes defensive when it is brought up. The pain in his voice was audible to me. This poor jerk was making connections. He had no intention of connecting Jacob. A lot happens to babies. I had a DNA test. Fuck. It's not mine either. Between us, there was stillness. Through the phone, I could almost hear Jacob's world collapsing. Oh no. I apologize, dude. He replied in a harsher voice. There's more. Investigating her behaviors during her pregnancy was something I did. It turns out that for 8 months, our little princess had an affair with her married boss at that marketing company. The man from Summit Marketing, Jesus Christ, yes. Trevor Mitchell. 43, has 3 children and a wife. Brianna was taking advantage of him at hotels during her lunch breaks and in his workplace after hours. About the time they began sleeping together, they became pregnant. The parts began to fit together. She was quite eager to get me out of the house because of this. She was looking for somewhere to take him. Improves. Jacob went on. His anger was evident in his voice. Do you recall how she was constantly discussing how she was going to grow in her career and get promoted? She was threatening to tell Mitchell's wife about the affair unless he offered her better jobs and raises, which turned out to be blackmail. Goddamn. Mitchell panicked and told his wife everything to get ahead of things when you exposed her phony lifestyle and she was sacked. He lost everything when his wife filed for divorce. This was superior to anything I could have planned on my own. What will you do then? I've already filed for divorce. She's screwed according to her own lawyer, and the house of cards is falling apart. I compared the next weeks like watching a slow-motion automobile catastrophe. Everything about Jacob's divorce went smoothly. It turns out that the courts aren't particularly understanding of your wife's predicament when she committed paternity fraud and the child isn't yours. Once more, Brianna lost everything. Without Jacob's income, the flat would not be able to pay for it. Since Mitchell's ex-wife was the only reliable parent, and what remained of her reputation, the infant courts granted her interim possession. When everyone knows you committed paternity fraud, it's difficult to keep up even the appearance of dignity. Rebecca Mitchell's ex-wife was reportedly a saint who felt sorry for the infant who was sucked into this turmoil. Given that Oliver had been the only father figure the child had known, she consented to let Jacob continue to date him if he so desired. In fact, Jacob accepted her offer because he was a better man than Brianna deserved. When I last heard from him, he was helping to raise all 4 children while dating Rebecca's sister. Mitchell's trio. Additionally, Oliver ended up being a better option for him than continuing to be married to a dishonest, deceitful fake. When I last heard from Brianna, she was working at a gas station, living in a women's shelter 2 towns away, and telling everyone she could find that she was the victim of a massive plot involving me, Jacob Mitchell's wife, and the entire legal system. There are those who never learn. After a while, Jacob and I reconcile. He expressed regret for putting his pussy before his family. I'm sorry for responding in such a radioactive manner. We also decided that sometimes you have to learn things the hard way. Our Sunday dinners are now again quiet, and Uncle Victor and Aunt Carmen still reside with me. No false grins, no drama. Nobody is planning to break into my house. Justice is lovely, but karma is a bitch.